Welcome to a very special Business in the Age of Empathy podcast episode. Because today we don't only have two guests, we also have a guest host, Isabelle Grosmaitre. She's the founder and CEO of Goodness & Co., a new kind of change management consultancy. She's also the author of Purpose-Led Companies, how the new generation of leaders can really change the world. As catalyst of change, Isabelle is at the heart of leadership movements acting for better futures. Steward of the Be for Good Leaders movement, co-founder of the board member program of Change Now, chairwoman of the advisory board of the Value Balancing Alliance, and co-founder of Generation Glasgow. On top of all that, she's also a member of the World Economic Forum. Isabelle has joined the 100 Davos Women, the global community of impactful women leaders. What better person to introduce the topic of today, Human Growth, the new book by our guests that she'll be interviewing.
Welcome everyone to the Business in the Age of Empathy forecast. Today is a very special moment. Why? Because we have two very special guests that will tell us more about their book. And let me start by introducing Andreea. Andreea is a neuroscience lover, a doctor in economics. But what really strikes me, she's a joy catalyst. Can you imagine? She's the founder of 1 Million Years of Joy, a global research project. And she explored today, after having several lives, but today she's exploring the synergies between neuroscience, leadership, and positive psychology. Your insights, Andreea, are featured in the most impactful media around the world, and I really look forward to our interview together. Christophe, let me introduce you. Christophe, you're a serial entrepreneur, a visionary leader, and a founder of Innate Motion. You are, for me, a true inspiration and a fabulous tennis player, as you know it. But you are also an organizational psychologist that really give, with both of you, a lot of depth in this book. And you have worked with leadership teams in the top Fortune 500 companies. And your experience will be very meaningful to all of us. Your book, the book we are about to discuss today, is the Human Growth Code. And you will discover more about it. It has been an amazing journey. And believe me, I am about to offer it to everyone in my team because this is so precious for everyone to learn and to grow. So without further ado, let's start. The question that everybody is dying to hear from you about is, why did you write this book? What inspired you, both of you, in writing in duo this fabulous book?
The inspiration really emerged, I would say, from various conversations that Christophe and I have had based on our collective and joint experiences. We're talking about how many organizational transformations are often associated with pain, turmoil, burnout. And it's very, very sad because when you're actually looking at all the research that we have shared in the Human Growth Code, there's actually great potential in bringing forth transformation that actually can be experienced with more joy, with more flow, with more aliveness, rather than fear. And I would say that's really one of the core aspects that we've integrated into the book to really bring a different shift in perspectives on how we look at growth and see it more as something that can be pursued in terms of many opportunities for growth, not only on a personal level, but also on an organizational level. Christophe?
I've always been fascinated by the human growth side, or the human side of growth, always. Ever since I was a small boy, this has been my big obsession. It's something that we at Innate Motion have been working at for 20 years. And what became clear to us is that meaningful growth is impossible without our ability to welcome change. And what the science is showing us is that every pivotal moment of growth is a byproduct of change. And yet change is experienced more with fear than with fascination. And it doesn't have to be that way. And that's why we wrote this book. And it was also such a joy to do this with Andreea. And every day we are journey people, always with curiosity, trying to understand how to unlock that potential. So it was just great to do that with her.
Thank you. So it's all about people, right? And I feel so grateful to have met both of you. So now let's dig into the real content of the book. And it's all about change, right? We are all conscious that change is no longer an option, but nevertheless, change is not easy. And being a leader, being a change maker is not an easy path. It's a learning journey. We know that sometimes the roads are straight, but very often they are bumpy. So change can help us grow, as you stated rightly so in your book, but it also can paralyze us. So what do you see as the biggest barriers to making businesses more human-centric today?
The biggest barrier for welcoming change are the limiting beliefs we hold onto, the collective anxieties we share, and the negative emotions these beliefs and anxieties trigger in us. So I think Abraham Maslow, well known within the business community, once stated that one can choose to go backwards towards safety or forward towards growth. Growth must be chosen, and it must be chosen again and again. Now, that was for me just fascinating, because I see when it's the key to helping people and organization move towards growth is to make the choice for growth more attractive and less threatening, while making the safe choices less attractive and more costly. And what's amazing is that the evolving science of positive psychology and neuroscience can help us to bridge that gap between where we are today and where we can be tomorrow. And what we see with change, in general, it's met with more resistance and less joy, because we forget to lay out pathways by which change can serve and the human agenda and the business agenda. We just ignore the human agenda. We just look at, this is what the organization needs. This is what the market needs. And in the process, the human factor is ignored.
This resonates so much. It's a choice. It's a choice. It's about going and choosing every single day growth and going beyond the fear. Thank you so much, Christophe, for sharing your insights. And Andreea, your expertise on neuroscience gives great insights on this. What's your thoughts?
I think when we're looking at change, particularly change that is imposed on us, rather than change that we choose to pursue ourselves, it's really the first option that often is more scary. This really brings us to the topic of leadership, right? How can leaders embark on a transformational journey that becomes less scary for individuals, gets them to be more engaged and involved in the process of evolution and transformation? And connecting back to the neuroscience is, how can we also understand in the context of organizations today that often have multiple generations? Many companies today have 4 or 5 different generations, and the needs of all those individuals are very, very unique and very, very different. Even beyond the generational dimension, when we're just looking at the human dimension, each person is unique in terms of their lives, in terms of their aspirations. And we really need to bring that humanity into the workplace to understand those core differences that make each person special in their own way, and open the door to get them to contribute to the positive evolution of the organization. Because often we have transformation that is led by the top, by the C-suite, or the individuals that are in a higher hierarchical power, and often they may have blind spots to true dimensions of the business that only individuals at certain levels or within certain roles may truly understand. And I think that's really one of the core dimensions that we need to explore here is how do we make change more collaborative and more inclusive to really allow everyone to shine and share their views and perspectives on how it can be done in a more human way that actually brings more joy as well.
That is so powerful. In our experience, serving courageous leaders to shift purpose into practice, we only think that have experience in 30 years that there is only one thing that really splits and enable companies to succeed versus fail. The ones that succeed are really able to harness the power of people around them. This is really the shift that is happening in the world. And your book is so precious because it is like a compass for me on how to really humanize change. And your way to explain it through the 4R that we are about to discover is a very simple way to understand it and really to help us grow in a sense. So maybe let's start with the first R, resilient. So what to say about resilience? It's about building solid human foundation to keep us thriving. And therefore, especially in the face of adversity, that is probably a very challenging one, actually. So how did you, Andreea, understand through the book that you have a lot of experience here, but it's about really helping leaders to embrace longevity and gratitude, and how do really leaders understand how precious life is and how it helps by fostering everyone in the face of adversity? Did you have yourself a tipping point or a moment when you realized how precious life was?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I would say that my life is almost segmented in multiple chapters, let's just call them. And there was a chapter where Andreea was really this workaholic that was sleeping often 6 hours max per night, working really day and night, pushing myself to limits that were not human. And when I look back on those days and now with all the knowledge that I have on how the brain works, when we deprive it of sleep, when we're not necessarily taking care of ourselves, it's really interesting. Let me just share with you the sleep factor, because resilience really starts with each leader taking care of themselves so they can lead and inspire others in new ways. And if we show up at work with less than 7 hours of sleep per night, it has been proven that our anxiety the next day will increase by up to 30%. So imagine engaging in conversations.
30%?
Yes.
Wow, that is huge.
Yes. So imagine a dialogue, imagine a conversation, particularly when there's tension, when there's uncertainty, when there's big decisions that have to be made. The reality is that under that level of stress, basically our brain really transforms tremendously. And we need to understand that sleep ultimately helps us calm down, have greater clarity, because when we operate in this high stress environment and mode, what happens actually is that our capacity to think creatively goes down. Our capacity to find long-term solutions to key problems that we have in front of us go down because we're so focused on short-term survival. And our capacity even to come up with complex solutions to complex problems goes down. So when I think back to my days as a leader, when I was really totally sleep deprived, I was actually depriving myself of the potential that we all have as humans simply by taking one small step of sleeping 7 to 8 hours each night.
Well, this is a very critical insight, because I think that every leader is fully conscious that it starts by taking care of themselves. but the amount of hours you sleep, I didn't know that number, and it strikes me. So how do you make sure that you set up rituals that enable yourself to take care of yourself? So sleep is one. Do you have others?
Yes, absolutely. Exercise is also extremely important. And I recommend actually exercising in the morning. There's a lot of research that shows that when you exercise in the morning, it actually prepares you to have a fantastic day because you're in a better mood. Productivity actually spikes hours after you exercise. You're going to have greater mental clarity, greater focus. So ultimately, it's all the benefits that we would hope to have in a work environment where we really want to show up in terms of our best self. So sleep, exercise, and of course then healthy habits. When we talk in the book about resilience, we also talk about the capacity to achieve states of flow. When we talk about the concept of flow, which has been proven to allow us to double our productivity by simply being in states of flow for about an hour to an hour and a half each day, it is quite important to understand that flow is a state which really is very taxing on the brain. So when we talk about flow, what we need to understand is that the lifestyle dimension is key to allow us to open the door to flow the next day. For example, if you have not slept the previous night, if you have had an evening maybe where you consumed alcohol, your brain the next day is not going to be able to be at its peak. It has been proven. So all these key lifestyle factors are really important. Even hydration is super important to the brain. If we truly want to elevate our resilience, if we want to elevate our productivity and really enter those states of flow that we talked about in the book, we need to understand that we need to prioritize our own health. Exercising and sleep and key lifestyle changes are really important in helping us find that energy, mental and physical energy that allows us to really show up as the best version of ourselves to be able to do great things ultimately.
No, this will be so precious for everyone that listens to the podcast, Andreea. Thank you so much for sharing those insights. So, Christophe, back to you. So, in your book, you talk about the 4 challenges, which are really key as acting as a compass to humanize growth in organization and humanizing change. So relevance is about mattering more tomorrow than you do today. In your book, you describe it as a human quest to find meaning in this world. This speaks a lot to me. And I love the exercise, by the way, in your book about sharing your social statements, saying 20 times, I am, I am, I am, because this is so crucial to understand what you stand for and the overarching aspiration that fuels everything you do. So, Christophe, how would you help organizations define those purposes?
If you speak about purpose and innate motion, we are very often called in to help companies or brands find their purpose. And I can see how they make mistakes. So when is a purpose limiting? It doesn't take you very far. It's when people are looking at it as a way to differentiate yourself, rather than a way of connecting to your broader ecosystems and contributing to it. So when it is just a tool to stand out with, rather than to connect with and integrate yourself with, purpose is quite limiting. And I would say too often purpose is used as a strategic management tool rather than a leadership tool. So I would say purpose is at its best, not only when it helps you make choices with a head, but mobilize yourself and others.
Tell me an example, maybe this would help to understand.
It's a story I tell with some difficulty because it's a story about the All Blacks, the All Black rugby team. They became, for a very long time, the most powerful force in performing in sport in the world. And I'm South African, so I'm a Springbok lover. So having to give all this credit to the All Blacks, it hurts in a way. But how did they transform their performance capacity on the field? It came through defining a purpose for themselves, which every single player could connect to and contribute to in their own way. And just imagine, you are a leader, and all the people that work for you say that our purpose is to leave the company in a better place for the people that will come next, for the next generation who will lead this company. And that's what the All Blacks did. Every All Black says, my job here is to leave the jersey in a better place than I found it. And that became a guiding glue for every All Black. And by choosing that and doing that on their terms, with their particular story connected to that, they became the most successful franchise of sports in the world with the highest percentage of winnings. And now, I have to say something for South Africa. Although they win more, we win more world championships. So,
Thank you. But we understand very well through this example that it's about connecting people and it's something more than strategic choices, if I may say. Let me move into the third R, which is relationship. Relationship, you're defining as sharing experiences that nurture connection, deeper and more meaningful connection, enabling everyone to thrive. So we understand very much the positive side of it, but how do you really bring this positive emotion and the power of harnessing the power of people together? How do you make that happen? How do you encourage people to achieve a bigger goal together?
So one of the first concepts that we suggest leaders embrace is asking themselves whether or not they have a KPI that is connected to joy. How often do you ask employees in your team, when was the last time you felt joy at work, doing what you do? Are you truly enjoying yourself? Do you feel fulfilled? And it's really one of the first key simple steps that all leaders can take. Another concept that I'd like to bring forward is really taking a step back and looking at every single interaction that we have as leaders and ask ourselves, did I elevate this person as they're walking away from this conversation, or did I bring them down? And actually, when we're looking at the emotional spectrum, it's very simple. We can either activate what is called attachment emotions in individuals, which really are known at the level of the brain to activate dopamine, which is really that happiness feeling that we have. Or we can activate on the opposite spectrum survival emotions, which are connected to fear, to anger, to anxiety, and so on. And those survival emotions activate cortisol in our brain, which is really the stress hormone. So if we really take a step back and assess how we have interacted at a human level with individuals, and have we activated the attachment and emotions that really feel joy, trust, love, or have we activated the survival emotion, it can truly transform our level of engagement. And sometimes it can be as simple as in terms of how we ask questions, how we interact. Often we see so much fear in organizations that people are walking around, as I said, with the stress brain that is not able to be as creative as we would hope individuals to be. So those simple steps could be very easy to implement. And the other dimension that I just want to bring forward as well is the reality that when we're talking about relationships, when people walk into a culture, into an environment, we often as organizations paint on the wall of our company, these are the values that we want to embody. And there's extensive research actually in publicly traded organizations that has shown that many of the values that companies say are important for them, when you truly look at the day-to-day experience of employees, it's a completely different reality. And in fact, the research has shown that there's zero correlation between the culture that is often portrayed by organizations in terms of the window that they want to be showing out to the world and the actual experience for employees.
Very helpful. Let's move into the fourth R, which is resourcefulness. It's about really empowering people around us so we can achieve goals together that we would not be able to have done alone. So this is very much about embracing others also. And the question for you, Christophe, is maybe in this, you have written that you recommend a few things, and I highlighted three of them. One is to put yourself in the arena before you're ready. The second is about creating a culture where people are responsibly taking and encouraged daily to solve the world's biggest challenges. And the last is about uniting forces with stakeholders for greater impact. Out of the three, what do you think is the tougher things to implement in organizations today?
Toughest things for leaders to embrace is to trust other people and give up control. I see so many leaders and entrepreneurs especially too often take a too big a load on their shoulders to achieve greater things. They know how to be independent, they don't know how to be interdependent. Why? Because interdependence comes with vulnerability and you don't manage everything. So certainly when they're not only building a product, but they are building a better company and a community and bettering an ecosystem. That's when I see they struggle and they don't know how to scale leadership beyond themselves. They think they can unlock resourcefulness in themselves and in others with management tools. But what they really need are tools and an environment to scale leadership. And this is the challenge. So people need to step into the arena, not just you. Confusing leadership and management is so often done. We have more tools for management than for leadership. And that's
How
why
would you differentiate both?
leadership, you need the courage to step into the arena and go into spaces that are uncomfortable. You have to be okay with ambiguity. It's not just measuring what is, but also sensing, letting something emerge with you, in yourself and in others. So that's a big difference. Leadership needs more of a heart. Management leads more with the head. And we grab back to management tools when things get tough, when things go wrong, when at exactly the moment when you need most help, you tend to grab to management, not to leadership. And an example that inspired me to turn around to what a business I have in Spain, which is a sport and wellness business, is the story of Rick Warren, who built the largest church congregation in the world, in California. And when I was reading the story, and you can find it back in the book, this guy was doing everything right what a CEO would do. You know, he was working harder, sleeping less, taking more upon his soldiers, putting more KPIs in place, all of that. And guess what happened to him? He had a burnout. He lost it. And then, wise as he is, he went into the desert and reflected upon what needed to happen. And the one thing he realized he needed to do was to let more people lead with a greater sense of autonomy, the church. And his insight started from a simple practical problem. He needed more classrooms to teach. And he asked some people of the congregation if they could use his home or their home as a classroom. And it felt quite awkward. You can imagine you as a leader asking the people that work for you or are in your community, can I use your home for a classroom? And they embraced it and they tapped into the power of social habits. And while people were going to each other's home to learn about the way of life of Christ, because that was what the church was about, and they got a routine, a rhythm, and built friendships, which became stronger than the church. So every week, these people came together, and every weekend, they celebrate what they do in the week at the Mass, and the Mass became more powerful. Now, if I bring it back to my paddle and tennis club in Spain, or wellness business, I was having a similar problem, that we wanted to do things better research, better service, better everything. And we had to do it all. And we were going nowhere until I saw that they were the most important thing for building this business is that people can put rhythm in their life by playing together. And so I hired social leaders to create social games. And within 2 years, the club has doubled. So there's less coaching and more social friendship building. And I have to do less because they do a lot more. Now, it's just an example. When you give people the space to lead, they welcome it. And they are solving many more problems than I could ever solve by myself.
I love it. And I love this optimistic lens also, because I believe it is possible. Believe it is possible to reinvent the way we do business. And I believe leaders are eager to make that change. I believe conscious leaders are becoming a movement, not a niche. And this book will sure help them, because I don't believe, as you do, that a system drive the change. I think people do. And this book is sure a guide, an invitation or help or whatever we call it to really humanize growth. And it will help, I believe, many change makers and leaders around the world. I really look forward to hear from everyone their feedback on the book and on this podcast, because we want to hear from you about your experience with this human growth code. And thank you so much, Andreea and Christophe. It has been an honor for me to animate this podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.